And I'm with Truth Action Ottawa. We're a group of individuals who disseminate factual information about important historical events. We started in April 2007 in response to an international call to action to participate in truthaction.org's 11th of every month campaign. As part of this campaign, every month we hand out information about the many questions that remain unanswered about 9/11. In early 2009, we added the exposure of the Canadian genocide of Aboriginal people to our mandate. We have been close supporters of tonight's speaker, Annett, since then. Despite Harper's apology, delivered with much ceremony and press coverage in 2008, many Canadians are still unaware of the full extent of the genocide that has taken place in this land. This is largely because the empty apology was not accompanied with jury trials for those who committed, facilitated, and continued to cover up the crimes. This is why tonight's speaker is so important. Without Mr. Annett's tireless and heroic efforts to expose the genocide, the apology would never have taken place. Despite brutal reprisals from both the Church and the Crown, Kevin has doggedly pursued the truth in an unrelenting quest for justice. We have in our midst tonight a true hero and champion for justice. It is my distinct honor and great privilege to introduce to you one of the most incredible people I've ever had the fortune of meeting, ladies and gentlemen, a Canadian hero and my dear friend, Reverend Kanien'keha.
It's good to see so many of you. I'm actually having gatherings of 3 and 4, so this is good. I want to name a number of other heroes before we start. Little girl Vicky Stewart, who was killed in a United Church residential school in 1958. She was hit on the back of the head with a 2x4 by Annett, who was a matron, and died the next day and buried in secret. And the family's been trying, without success, to get the United Church to respond for 3 years now to the fact of her murder. And my friend Bingo Dawson, who was killed by 3 Vancouver police in December 2009. And the thing that made Bingo a particular hero is that he went through severe torture at a young age in the Anglican school in Old Bay, British Columbia. And he ended up on the street. When I met him about 6 years before he died, he was a really bad alcoholic, and yet he was a really beloved man on the streets of Vancouver. He used to adopt people all the time as his own, feed them with what little food he had. He was a heart and soul of that community, and sure enough, when we began to take actions at the churches, he used to lead those nonviolent, respectful occupations of the churches during the Sunday Mass and services. And he used to do it with a lot of joy. I remember one incident that happened where he and his friend Frank, another survivor, had the banner. His banner we've taken all over the world. We've probably seen it. It says, "All the children need a proper burial." We stood outside the Vatican with it, and a picture of Bingo outside the Vatican last year. And Frank and him went into the church, and the guy at the door locked the door on the rest of us. So he kind of probably thought he had kept his protesters out there. Frank and Bingo were already inside. So they went to the front of the church, and they just stood there in front of the altar with the banner, and they just stood there. And they said the congregation, like often happens, were very interested, and there were even people coming up and shaking their hand, and that really pissed off the priests, who were getting very upset, so they called the cops, naturally. But before the cops came home, I remember Bingo and Frank came up the side door holding the banner, and I've never seen him so happy, because for him it was like a personal victory. He told me later, it's the only time he ever felt healed. Because what he had done is he stood up to the church that had done that to him. And he said, when I was inside there, I wasn't afraid anymore, because I knew I couldn't let Frank down, and we couldn't let you guys down. And I always remember that when I remember Bingo, because it's like he taught me then that if there's going to ever be any, I rejected the word healing, because it's a cheap and easy and self-serving term. But if there's going to be any change, I don't want to heal, I want to transform. I think we need to change so we wouldn't do this shit anymore. And if that's ever going to happen, it's going to be because we do it together. So that's one of the things Bingo taught me, and he's with us tonight very much. So. Another thing I want to show you is something I'm going to actually hand into the Prime Minister's office tomorrow. It's a summons from our tribunal in London, which is going to be convened in September. And it's an actual summons for Stephen Harper to appear before it and answer charges of being complicit in concealing crimes against humanity. And so we're going to put that on YouTube. We're going to film it tomorrow. It'll be up on YouTube if you're looking for that. But this is part of the work that I'm engaged in now, and I want to have some of the time tonight to talk about that after I'm going to do a little reading. I assume that a lot of you already know a certain amount of the story. And but just let me ask first, how many of you have seen the film Unrepentant? Okay. And seen the website? Yeah, so I don't want to repeat a lot of things that you might already know, but I want to do a few brief readings to kind of give a little bit of an overview, but also the direction that I feel this whole thing is moving right now. This is my book. Came out, published in England, and this last year. Disrobing the Emperor, Unrepentant. One of the reasons that I put it in this form is that what I found is the mainstream, so-called mainstream culture has a real difficulty in looking at itself, and there's a lot of obvious reasons for that. But when you tell the story of a massacre in general, it's hard for anybody to internalize that. And when you tell one story and one person's struggle, and I don't mean just me, I'm talking about any of the people we're going to hear about tonight, we can put it in the context of something we can understand. And that was part of the reason I wrote this. Anyway. In the prologue I wrote, it's called When Churchyards Yawn. The years have hidden most of their features now, covering the truth with blackberry brambles, towering maples or elms, and often hurriedly piled soil. But like the shell holes of forgotten wars, the mass graves that dot our landscape tell those who will learn about what really happened in the cold and deadly halls of the Indian residential schools. Children were buried in these places, many children. Tuberculosis-ridden or beaten featureless, their little bodies were dumped in these places in the pit of night. The youngest victims were newborn babies, born of rape at the hands of men who wore crosses and spoke of God. Sometimes, fearing the evidence of their crime, they burned their children in the school premises. Some of them undoubtedly said a prayer when they did so. Other children looked on or held the furnace door open, and today they speak of what they saw. Maisie Shaw, Elaine Dick, Maggie Seward, Richard Thomas, Vicky Stewart, Albert Cardinal, Margaret Sepass, Mitchell Joseph, Bernadette Thomas, Richard Johnson, Vicky Stewart, and more than 50,000 other children. I remember when I was in Chiapas, I went in 1987. One of the things that started me on this path was when I was in seminary. I went on a trip down to the refugee camps on the Guatemala-Mexico border. And I found something there that I just wanted to describe briefly, if I can. There was about 10,000 people living in this camp, and they were all Mayan Indians. They were Kipche and Man Indians, who traditionally they were from a very ancient civilization in the Yucatan Peninsula that Cortez had reduced, and his followers in a century, by about 90%. And that, when you look at Turtle Island in the Western Hemisphere, that's about the proportion of indigenous people who were wiped out. And I often find it interesting that the biggest genocide in human history is not called that in the country where it happened. And that's something we should talk about.